guys? Welcome to another episode of Eyes on Geopolitics. I'm here with Mick Mulroy, Jason Lyons, and myself, Dimitri Kontakos. A lot cooking as usual. That's going to be my line. I'm going to make merch. This is a lot cooking. Um, First and foremost, Ukraine, Russia. A couple days ago, it's been more than a couple days when Russia hit Kyiv with a big ballistic missile attack that I think killed up to to 9 or 10 people. Last time I checked, I'm sure it's probably gone up since then. Um, a lot been cooking too. Witkoff met with Vladimir Putin yesterday at the Kremlin. Old friends, it looked like old friends meeting up again. Uh, and today, obviously, at the Pope's funeral afterwards, when they cleared out the hall, there's pictures coming out of President Trump and President Zelensky sitting down having a powwow about what comes next, I guess. So let's kick off, Mick. Thoughts, comments.
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to the actual proposal, um, it's important to point out that Ukraine has made it clear for essentially any time they've discussed a potential ceasefire, that they're not going to give up permanently any part of their territory to include Crimea, right? So Crimea was illegally occupied and seized in 2014. The original proposal, which I just referred to as the Kellogg proposal, simply froze the lines, right? So it didn't say that you have to give up territory. It simply asked Ukraine to acknowledge they couldn't take it back militarily. That I think is something more in line with what Ukraine can agree to. But to actually um, give Russia, the aggressor, part of your territory, not only would be bad for Ukraine, it'd be bad for anybody that wants to keep their territory if they're next to a country that's strong enough to take it. Uh,
Oh,
it sets the wrong
who's that?
example. I think it's brother Andy Milburn right there.
Brother Andy Milburn coming in just on time. I'm saying that.
He heard me talking about Ukraine, and
Yeah, he
Yeah,
jumped
he's
in.
Ukraine.
Andy, what's up, man? I'm gonna leave this all in. We're not starting over.
Yeah.
No, we can't hear you.
he's on mute.
Yeah,
What's up,
All
dude?
right.
it has me permanently on mute.
Yeah, I wish. Andy Milburn, of course. Welcome to the show. We were just talking about updating everybody on what's going on with Ukraine negotiations and
Yeah. So
where
I
we're
was
at with
talking
that.
about the proposal, Andy, that the U.S. put out there. So not accepting that Crimea would be permanently part of Russia is something that Ukraine has said from the beginning. And it's important to point out that Secretary Rubio, then Senator Rubio, actually tried to get legislation that the U.S. would never recognize Crimea as Russia. So it's kind of surprising. It surprised many that that would be something that he would now propose, um, that Ukraine just accept. So it was a very, I would say, pro-Russia position, and something that I think should have been avoided. We should have essentially asked for a ceasefire, like the United States did. I'm important to point that out. We asked for a 30-day ceasefire. Ukraine accepted it. Russia rejected it. That's when you should start talking negotiations. We should have the ceasefire first.
Russia
What?
not
What?
only rejected it, but stepped up attacks
Yeah, stepped up attacks. Actually,
on civilian target, by the
That's
way,
right. So
over here.
60 missiles that I think President Zelensky's saying come from North Korea. So now, the Ukrainians are not only fighting a country much larger than them, they're fighting Iranian drones, North Korean soldiers, North Korean missiles, and apparently, at least there's some reports that Chinese are showing up on the battle space. So I don't think the United States should obviously walk away. I don't even know why we're talking about that. We need to be, I think, um, reinforcing Ukraine to make Russia want to come to the negotiation table. Right now, they don't. And to the point of President Trump's statement that Russia's going to take it in 3 years, if Russia could take it, they would have taken it already. And if they think they could take it in 3 years, they wouldn't agree to a ceasefire. So obviously, the fact that they're talking about it means that they have not know that they've taken 800,000 casualties to take less than 20% of Ukrainian territory. And to be frank, if we would have been more forthright in our support to Ukraine, in other words, supporting them to win, not just survive, I don't think they would have been able to take that. So I would advocate for a different tack, which is impose secondary sanctions on the Russian energy, which means India and China couldn't purchase Russian energy, release the funds that's been seized in Europe, particularly Belgium. I think it was like $325 billion worth of Russian assets, so Ukraine can arm itself, and then increase across the board to include U.S. security assistance and obviously the Europeans for Ukraine immediately. That would change, I think, the perspective of Russia, which is the only thing that's going to change the perspective of whether we get a ceasefire. I got covered.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree 100%. I would go further. You know, we've talked about understanding Russian negotiating psychology, which has nothing to do with acknowledging dispensations. In other words, you start offering things to Russia, they don't take it as a quid pro quo, they take it as a sign of weakness. I mean, this has gone back to Soviet times. It's gone back to Yalta, you know, in Stalin's dealings with Roosevelt and Churchill, and you know, Churchill, and I'm not just saying this because I'm British, recognizing grudgingly that they would have to offer up Poland, but Roosevelt being all in on that, saying, you know, hey, look, we've got to offer a dispensation because Uncle Joe has been fighting the Germans almost single-handedly, et cetera, and we will get, you know, with the understanding that in some post-war era, Russia would pay us back with goodwill. I mean, look how that happened. And we're still making the mistake because we don't study history. Our administration doesn't study history. So I would go further and say, hey, either you come to the negotiating table, we're offering you Crimea, which, by the way, honestly, the Ukrainians would acknowledge and would have acknowledged probably at an earlier stage in the war that Crimea is a done deal. You know, it'll belong to Russia. We'll offer you
But I don't
Crimea.
think they should accept that it is Russia. It's one thing to accept they can't take it
Exactly.
back
Yes.
militarily. If you just start saying, okay, well, it's yours now,
Yeah.
and the whole world recognizes it, then that just opens the floodgates.
I agree 100%. I misspoke. So you acknowledge and say it's part of Russia. Now you're basically agreeing to might is right, and whatever you seize is now yours. But we say, look, it's seized Ukrainian terrain, but we are, for the time being, are willing to concede it to your ownership. Okay, but you got to have a big stick with Russia. What is that big stick? What is Russia most scared of? Fast track to NATO for Ukraine. You break the ceasefire, fast track, man. We're all in. So now not only have Sweden and Poland joined, I mean, sorry, Sweden and Finland joined, not only is Poland a much stronger nation than it was 3 years ago militarily, 4% of its GDP focused on defense, but now you're going to have the second largest and the most combat experienced military on the good side within NATO. I mean, that's what Russia fears most. Plus, all in on weapons, providing weapons to Ukraine. That means across the EU and the United States, piling them in. Long range precision strike, go for it. Absolutely.
No restrictions.
155 millimeter rounds, flood them with them. You know, make the ratio equal between Ukrainians and Russians. I mean, that is what the Russians are really afraid of, and that is the only thing that'll get them to negotiate. I mean, the incredible naivety that we've shown so far, and Putin is laughing at us. What has he done? What has he done since the Oval Office debacle with Zelensky? Putin has just gone ahead and upped the ante, and he is laughing. He's saying, "I've got the U.S. wrapped around my finger." Everyone knows this. Everyone sees it. We're the laughing stock of Europe and throughout Russia, by the way. It's time to acknowledge that.
Hey guys, it's Jack. I want to tell you guys about the sponsor for today's show. It's Mando. Mando makes a whole series of male grooming products. They are unique in that they are a deodorant that you can use all over your body, on armpits if you like, but also wherever else you may deem necessary. And I have been using these products for about 3 months now. I've been using the body wash. It's bourbon leather. I've been using their bar of soap, which I really enjoyed, and also their deodorant. And so I exercise a lot and get very sweaty, so I need a deodorant that's going to do the job. And Mando has come through for me. You know, the body wash was great. I actually used all of that. Need to reorder some more. But the bar of soap was also very cool. It was very smooth, actually. So I hope you guys will go and check them out. They have a starter kit that's up there, and they have a special deal for Team House viewers. So the starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code TEAMHOUSE at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando.
I got a question. Who holds the purse strings to that 325 bill that's frozen, and why aren't they releasing it to buy more weapons?
I think it's the government, because they of course monitor the banks and have control over the banks. Could be wrong, so I don't know for sure, but that, because it's talked about so much, they clearly have the ability. Well, it's already frozen, but they clearly have the ability to release it. And if they do that, I mean, there could be consequences, but there should be consequences to, invading a neighboring country.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be my argument. And I don't think, especially if you use it in defense, although I wouldn't just have it go to defense, but I mean, they could purchase all the air and missile defense systems available in the world with that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So if Russia can't actually hit them, then this war is going to turn for Russia. Let's face it, they're actually attacking, like Andy said when he started, they're attacking civilians, right? They're a terrorist state. They go deliberately after civilians and kill women and children. So I don't know why we wouldn't have already done that. I don't know what we're waiting for. And I think it should be done immediately if it can. I don't know the United States needs to agree with it at all. I think Europe could actually do it.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's actually a really good point. We've hounded Europe time and again about stepping up to the plate as far as expenditure. And look, there's some justification in that. But the bottom line is, as we've explained over and over again, the show, since the Marshall Plan, the defense of Europe hasn't been about financial transactions. It's about being an implicit understanding that European nations are the battleground, and the United States provides unlimited funding, all right, to fight that fight in Europe, not nearer to our own shores, all right, in defense not only of Europe, but our own national interests, for Christ's sake. That is why we're doing it. It's not about quid pro quo on money. We're the richest nation on earth. Well, we used to be before we started tariffing everyone. But yeah,
Andy's coming in hot today, and I love it. I love it.
We're stepping our GDP not on defense of NATO, but because of this ridiculous policy of imposing tariffs around the world. And other countries are going to find go-rounds. They're initially going to be hit economically, but ultimately the country that's going to suffer most economically is us. So now we've abdicated our national interests, and we've abdicated our economic standing in the world. So what do we have left? Well, we've got the Gulf of America, I've got to admit, and that's pretty cool. I mean, but you know what? We had it before. It was just called something different. No, I mean, is anything of that I've said incorrect?
No.
And that's a rhetorical question, guys. You're supposed to say, no, Andy, you're 100%
right. I'm sure somebody listening to us.
I've stopped going on social media because, I had no idea that I had so many ignorant friends, present company accepted. and all this talk about, oh my God, we just avoided World War III. Putin would have escalated. And like, for Christ's sake, he's been threatening to escalate since day one. He's been threatening to escalate since 2014. Guess what? If he thought he could get away with escalating, he would have fucking escalated because he doesn't give a shit. Right? You name it, tactical nukes, whatever. If he thinks he can get away with it and achieve his aims through that, do you think he's held back by any social compunction, by any empathy? No, not at all. He will escalate and escalate, but he hasn't because he is afraid. But unfortunately, he's becoming less and less afraid. So the chances of escalation are greater. And as you know, listen, the threat, this fear of escalation goes way back. It's not specific to this administration. It goes all the way back to the Obama administration in 2014. We've been really concerned as Putin does things, said, oh my God, if we piss him off, he's going to do something worse. What the fuck worse could he do? I mean, okay, the reason why he's not using tactical nukes, I bet you, is because someone who I know that that he was messaged that, hey, if you do, that's going to be a really, really bad idea for you. Because guess what? NATO's got plenty of nukes too, and mutually assured destruction or mutually assured destruction, even confined to the battlefield, is not, it's not passe. It's something that he still recognizes, and that's something that we should continuously remind him of. Why wouldn't, if he uses tactical nukes, why would we not do the same? Listen to me. I'm sounding like a hawk, but I mean,
Yeah, you are.
it's not my personal feelings about Russia. It is, I mean, I felt this way before enduring a year of Russian artillery and drones. I mean, it's just because I read history.
Why don't we do secondary sanctions on Russian oil to India and China? What's stopping us there?
We could. President Trump has said that he's considering it. Perhaps if we go back to the original plan, which is not actually acknowledging that Crimea is Russia, freezing the lines, having a European security element go in, which in a way is a security guarantee, right? You have to attack European forces to start the war again. I mean, think about it. If President Putin will not accept it, that's because he intends to restart the war, right? I mean, that's clear. I think if we went back to that and they wouldn't accept it, then we start amping it up. Secondary sanctions. Russia, Senator McCain used to call Russia an army with a gas station. That's what they got. That's all they got. They just have oil, right? So they don't have an economy other than that. And if they can't sell it or find a way to sell it, then they can't function and essentially can't fuel their war machine. So I think it's something that we should go back to the original plan, not the one that Special Envoy Witkoff presented, but the one that Special Envoy Kellogg, like General Kellogg, originally talked about. And I think that's something that's more in line. And then it's up to the Ukrainian people, of course. This is their country. But I think that's certainly more fair than the one that was actually proposed last week or this week.
Yeah, bring Kellogg back, for Christ's sake. What happened to him? Anyone know?
He's still there. He's still there.
Yeah. I mean, he understands Russia.
Yeah, but that's why the Russians said we don't want them negotiating. Why the fuck are they choosing who negotiates and what?
Yeah, that makes him perfect. Like, okay, well now you've ensured that he's going to be the
right. I'm going to make sure he's in the center fucking table.
Yeah. Russia is as Mick pointed out, Russia is a fucking paper tiger. Russia has been unable to invade a country 1/5 of its size with an army. One 1/7 of the size of Russia now. Actually, it was less than that at the outset of the war. Totally unable to do it. Even with tactical surprise on its side, even with all the mistakes that the Ukrainians made at the outset of the war by not bolstering their defenses, all of those things caught relatively by surprise, the Ukrainians still managed to defend their country, confine Russian advances to 1/20th of its territory, and inflict extraordinary losses on the Russian military machine. What are we afraid of as the United States? Why are we kowtowing to Russia? I just don't understand. You talk about patriotism. You've got all these so-called patriots who are just like terrified of Russia. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah, absolutely. Bring McCain back. What happened? What happened to the strength of the Republican Senate? Those who really understood Russia for what it is.
I need more Reagan Republicans, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Bring them
good
all back.
point. Yeah, I mean, they're going back to Reagan. Reagan understood negotiating.
That's
Um,
right.
Andy,
Questions.
I remember a episode you did with us on Team House, and you mentioned like the big reason why Russia's hitting a wall in Ukraine is because they didn't do enough, like they didn't modernize their forces after Georgia in '08.
Yeah, there were a series of reforms, but basically effects of those reforms were largely swallowed in corruption. Huge amount of money was funneled into the army. There were a lot of, in American terms, it breathed well, but the results were minimal. And a lot has been talked about this, but across the board, from a lot of money was spent on improving weapon systems or acquiring new weapon systems, but when it came to structure, when it came to training, when it came to recruiting, selection, when it came to culture within the Russian army, nothing changed. It still remained the same. I mean, there's many things. You can talk about how the motorized rifle battalion was staffed. I mean, in practice, with far too many ground pounders to man their IFEs and their APCs, all the way through to the methodology of recruiting. So you could buy your way out of being inducted into the Russian army. I mean, all the way up to the war, and even now you can do that. And the Russian going into the Russian military, it was regarded as a fate only for losers, for those who couldn't avoid anything else. So they had very low quality of recruits. They didn't have enough recruits. They didn't train them well enough. And when they were reported to their units, they suffered from appalling discipline. Units that were understaffed, no maintenance, um, you name it. When all the problems went on and on, and so none of the endemic problems that were exhibited in Georgia were really fixed. If anything, they became worse. Now, the Russian military, it's fair to say, is a learning organization to some extent. So they've learned a fair amount, and they are formidable now when it comes to electronic warfare. They're formidable when it comes to use of drones. They are far ahead of the United States military in that regard, but they still are a third-rate army. When you talk about brigade level leadership and above, you look about how their attacks are planned. When I was in Bakhmut, consistently when the Ukrainian or adjacent Ukrainian units took prisoners in the assault, even Wagner assault units, right? They had no idea really what their objectives were. They were following azimuths. Many of them were aggressive fighters. They had felt they had nothing to lose. But in the end, small, their small unit or their leadership from small unit level up, and their training was appalling. I mean, ironically, the things, when you look at their tactics now on the battlefield, they've learned, but they've learned very, very painfully. And you look now at their small unit tactics, where they are successful, and they have adopted many of the kind of Ukrainian tactics before an assault. They will use small units mounted on quad bikes or motorcycles, heavily equipped with drones to go in and probe Ukrainian lines and draw fire and find gaps. It's a reconnaissance pool. And these are, the more highly trained soldiers. But then once they've identified gaps in the Ukrainian line, it gets back to their old tactics of just mass pouring soldiers into these assaults, which incur massive amount of casualties. And when they overrun Ukrainian positions, as they're trying to do again now, for instance, vicinity of Solidol, you will see that they are still taking huge number of casualties because their commanders lack the tactical prowess, they lack imagination.
Yeah. Well said. What a great question by me, by the way.
Well done.
Uh, Anything else on this? Where do you see this going? I know people are guffawing or like and freaking out over like Trump and Zelensky meeting at the Vatican after the Pope's funeral. Like something's going to actually happen and Trump's somehow going to change his mind. Any thoughts till we before we move on?
It's better
Uh,
that they met than they didn't meet, that's for sure. Hopefully, without the the audience of cameras and other people, that they were able to talk about what Ukraine is willing to accept and what they need the U.S. to push for. Hopefully, that's what they discussed, and that we go forward with that plan and stop talking about basically everything that Russia would have put together, minus dismantling the Ukrainian military, was in their proposal. And it was, I mean, it's not just Russia's tactics. They go in with extreme requirements to start a negotiation. I mean, that's a common tactic. We should have just summarily dismissed them and then talked about something that was more reasonable. And Ukraine has a counter proposal with Europe, which calls for a cessation of hostilities, the withdrawal of Russian forces, of course, because they're going to be as forthright as they can, and then of course compensation or retribution for all the damage that they've caused. And I think they're going to agree to this rare earth mineral deal with the United States. I would hope that would be an investment by the United States. It's going to cost billions of dollars to even set it up to get this material out of the ground. That could be beneficial to both the United States and Ukraine. I don't think that's a bad thing. But we're going to have to reset the conversation and potentially get Senator or Secretary Rubio more directly involved. Obviously, as you could tell from me and Andy's comments, General Kellogg, who knows Russia, and I don't think is confused by them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hey, still on the topic of Russia and Ukraine. I was just trying to look up the name of the senior former CIA official whose son, Michael Gloss, was just killed in Ukraine fighting for the Russians. Um,
Yeah, she's the
and Jason,
digital
I think you
deputy.
mentioned, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mick.
I don't remember her. I think it's the same last name, and she's the deputy for like digital. I don't know if Jason knows.
Innovation.
I don't. Yeah,
She's a former
Yeah.
CIA employee.
I think she's current.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, he was fighting for the Russians, but here's the curious thing about it. If you look at his background, he's a lefty. I mean, he was pro-Palestinian. Uh, he was very vocal about left-wing causes, and it brings to mind again this very confused approach to policy in the United States, or the attitude towards Russia from the left and the right, okay, of commiserating with Russia or aligning with Russia. I mean, we've already talked about on, the right of American politics, how they kind of eulogize the Russians. But it's fair to say on the left of American politics, the same thing. And it's just so bizarre.
I
Here's a
think
guy.
the problem with far left, like guys who are people who are far left, is like they're just tankies. They're just anti-American imperialism at any cost. That's why they kind of give China a pass, kind of give Russia a bit of a pass as well. Like,
They're
You guys
pro-Russian
froze.
imperialism,
yeah,
right?
it
There's one
makes no
country that's
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
invading another
No,
country right now.
let's
Yeah.
get back. Let's get back to our favorite, one of our favorite topics, Blumenthal, right? Not Sid, Max Blumenthal, right? So remember him. I mean, he's banging the drum on the Palestinian cause and all these other things, and yet, according to Washington Post article, is invited to Russia to celebrate these various events. It was he was invited to Russia. I think it was like, what was it, the 70th anniversary of the founding of the Soviet Union. Was that right? 70th or 80th anniversary, and he goes, and it's an event attended by Putin. And he's if you look at his postings, very, very pro-Russian, aside from, him attacking me, of course. And that was his, gray zone. The Gray Zone website too, by the way, Washington Post uncovered some dude, one of the founding members, was taking money from the Iranians, right? So again, it's just this weird confluence in on the left-wing politics of kowtowing again to Russia and these countries that are autocratic. I mean, beyond belief. It's so I'm not sure if this is just a comment about Blumenthal's personal ethics, which I think, I don't think he has any, but also his just confused political, right?
Yeah,
I think
it's
if you get
interesting to
far
see.
enough out on the fringes, it's like a circle. It ends up in the
Yeah,
same
Yeah,
place, right?
yeah,
yeah. I mean, in,
Yeah.
in in his case, I mean, obviously he was, according to the Washington Post, he was getting some things in return from the Russians. So there was a personal calculus. There was um, and maybe it made him feel important. Maybe a bit. I mean, it's just, these people who pretend to be principled, pretend to have ideals, and yet are absolutely, absolutely um, proxies of adversaries to the United States. And that's
yeah.
what I find really quite concerning.
Listen, I'll be honest. I'm a bit of a lefty, right? And you
Yeah,
see,
listen, yeah,
sorry
this is
guys.
about politics.
No, but
You're
I
you're
We're
noticed
balanced
like
on this show.
you're an
We're
American
balanced.
idealist, right?
exactly. Yeah, of course.
So for some reason, when you hear the term patriot, you think right-wing conservative.
Sure.
But my point is, no, that's not necessarily the
Right.
case at all, nor it
Yeah.
should be. It should be guys like maybe you, no, I mean definitely you. I mean who care about American values.
Sure.
That's the important thing,
So
right?
like the thing that I've gotten like away from with like in terms of like some lefty commentators and stuff is like they're able to somehow defend places like China when it comes to the Uyghurs or Tibet and stuff like that and like really downplay the fucked up shit that China does as well as Russia like the whole time like they like some of the talking points like Crimea is part of Russia like bro no it's like I just don't understand how they could fucking where the rationale and logic comes from with some of them. That's why with the tankies I'm like
Because because if you stake your beliefs to your ego and you stake both of those things to the policies of a foreign power, then you are destined to have to support whatever that foreign power does. That's really basically the way this broken chain of logic runs,
yeah
where you are a Max Blumenthal or you are I don't know, think of someone on the far right. They are
Tim
it's
Pool like
what's
I mean Tim Pool is one of the guys who got money from one of the media companies where Russia was paying these guys to do pro-Russian videos and stuff like that, paying them like obscene amounts of money and stuff like that. Where
yeah.
and there's
Yes,
endless
Robert.
videos of like guys like that saying like Ukraine is not our friend, like really passionate, like shitting on Ukraine. And
Yeah,
it's just like, dude, I get it. Like Ukraine's got corruption issues like every other country for sure.
it's not
But
there. All right, I got in
they
trouble for
didn't
talking
invade
about it.
anybody.
Yeah.
They didn't invade anybody. They got invaded. So, like, what would you do in that same position? This is a logic that's lost, and I can't. I don't abide by it. I'm not with it.
Hey,
Yeah,
real
we've
real
lost the
quick.
bubble on our politics here.
Right.
I'm actually in Old Town, so I used to have a priest friend that there's a lot of Irish pubs here, as you probably know. Who used to go to these the ones around here. At one time back in the 80s, he walked in there and he noticed a bunch of dudes standing around looking pretty stiff. And he walked past a booth and it was Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill when he was president,
Oh wow.
sitting in an Irish pub having a pint, talking if
Yeah,
you're not familiar, Tip O'Neill was a Democratic leader of the
Democrat.
House,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, that used to be our politics. And now we have people that are so far on the fringe, they're actually supporting our most significant, my view, most dangerous adversary in Russia on both sides, which is just
they
bizarre.
regard those across the aisle as being worse enemies than our actual foreign
than our
adversary.
actual enemies.
And you don't have to go that far back. Yeah, I mean, that's a famous example, isn't it? Reagan and Tip O'Neill. But there's, McCain and Obama. I mean, used to meet in the evenings to talk about stuff. You couldn't, they fought a bitter presidential race against one another. And yet had enough mutual respect, or both understood that both of them had the interests of the United States at heart, and we have certainly lost the bubble on that. Hey, speaking of which, Dee, and I know this is a bit of a digression, but on the other, talk to us about the former CIA guy that you entertained on the Team House, who is now a traitor. And that's question number one. Question number two, I don't agree with the idea now to change the name to the Traitor House, although it has a catchy
Good. Well,
ring.
because that never was on the table, first and foremost.
Real quick, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Andy. The woman's name, that CIA official, her name is Julianne Galena. She was
Oh,
the
right.
deputy, or is the deputy director for digital innovation.
Wow.
What a blow! I mean,
Terrible.
Yeah.
awfully sad story for the parents.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And death of a young man. I think he was only 20 years old, or 22. But so misled too that he
Yeah.
died in the service of Russia.
Yeah.
You
His
know,
father said that he suffered from mental illness all his life, and he just kind of up and disappeared and ended up over there.
Yeah, awful story. Yeah.
I feel very
And the Russians, the Russians are they're rolling anyone into the military. There's the stories of have you read the story about the Indians who went to Moscow for a bachelor party and ended up all being arrested and put in uniform and sent to Ukraine. I mean, you can't make this shit up.
Wow.
I mean, if you think I'm bullshitting about that, look it up. These guys thought for some reason it'd be a good idea to go to Moscow for a bachelor party. I mean, what's wrong with Prague, right? But it's like the worst. It's like a really bad Bollywood version of The Hangover.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
That
wake
could
up
be a movie.
You wake
Donbass,
up, you're in, you wake up, you're
Yeah.
in Donbass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not awesome.
And the same
That's
story
only
about the
another
Chinese dudes who were just captured. I mean, they being interrogated by the Ukrainians, which I understand the rules about interrogating prisoners in public, etc. I mean, in the media, that's not, I'm not advocating that. But the point is that these guys were saying that, they were, it wasn't like a holiday they applied for. They knew they were volunteering to fight for Russia. But there is a serious recruiting effort going on in China, with or without the witting acknowledgement of the Chinese government. You can decide for yourself, to draw people in to fight for them. And within the Russian ranks, there are tens of thousands of foreign semi-volunteers who are cajoled or brought in to join the meat grinder. But I'm sorry, I took the topic away from the Traitor House. What was the story?
Unbelievable. I mean, Dale Blender was a former CIA officer. He's been SIS. We had him on. We interviewed him. He got arrested and he pled guilty for mishandling classified information and not registering as a foreign agent while he was also working in the CIA as a contractor after he retired. I'm sure there's more to it. It's just what it is. You can check out the episode. I think it's a good one. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Here's what a
We've also had John Kiriakou on the show.
who's he?
He's former CIA officer. Huh?
Not another traitor, right?
Well, I mean, it depends where you're
Depends
looking
on
at
how
it.
you look at it.
Yeah. That's like my actual title of the thing is whistleblower or traitor.
Oh, okay.
He's the guy that's talking about the advanced interrogation stuff. He got fired and went to jail for
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
leaking stuff to
Yeah, that's different. I mean, he wasn't working for a foreign government, right?
no, but then he got out and he started working for Sputnik Radio. So that's like
Oh,
the
okay.
big rub on people. I mean,
So
we
he did.
asked him about like why work for Sputnik. He's like, listen, I got 5 kids, and when I got out, I didn't have a pension. I mean, I get that. I know that people, you can't do it. I mean, he has since not working for Sputnik and stuff like that, but that is another debate that can be had. Because I remember when I told a couple people, former CIA people, that we were having Kiriakou on, they got very upset with me.
Did they?
Oh,
Well,
they
they
were
got
giving me
upset.
shit.
People got upset about Mark, right? I mean, so you're
Mark
always,
P.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
you're
yeah.
always,
Yeah.
or you're always going to find people upset. But no, I mean, I think, you've got a wide spectrum of guests. You've got, you have traders, you have child molesters,
This
um,
fucking guy. We have
and
you on
and yeah, I mean, you clearly
multiple
have a
times.
problem with standards. Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'd be down to have a former Al Qaeda guy on. I would be honest with you. I mean, why not? Why not get their story? I mean, we had somebody set up who became a CIA source and agent, worked for the CIA for a long time, and then got out of here and came to America. We were trying to get him on, but he got cold feet.
I can
So
get you a guy who's
I'm in.
he actually knew
Here's the pitch.
Zawahiri well, and he was Al Qaeda, and now he's not, or I wouldn't be hanging with him. But now
Sure.
he's an American who does
No kidding.
de-radicalization. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow, that would be a
He's a
fascinating.
I
doctor.
would
He's a
I would
physician.
love that.
Yep, that's how he knew. You know, Zawahiri. He was a doctor with him. He joined with him. He got out. He totally reformed himself, and he works for the U.S. government and does a lot of de-radicalization.
Yeah, I would
And
love
different
that.
perspectives. Yeah, I can get that. He has a book too.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm down to hear other people's perspectives and stuff. Especially like, I don't know if I'd be cool with having a Wagner guy on now.
Well,
Maybe
he's reformed, so he's
that's
not
what
going
I
to
mean.
advocate for
Right,
Al Qaeda,
right.
right?
Maybe
But
in
he
like 10 or
he
15
did
years.
more than most. Put it that way.
Right.
What the allure is.
And Scott Ritter, we had Scott Ritter on when you're talking about child molesters. I was not the producer of the team house
All
at
right,
that point.
I didn't match names to any descriptions
Just
there.
FYI, okay? Okay, Andy, coming out here. Your invitation is revoked, by the way.
You never gave me another invitation.
Shut up. All right, moving on.
So there is another negotiation that's pretty important, and that's the Iran.
Yeah, but let's hit on also talking about nuclear powers and stuff. India, Pakistan going at it a little bit of a scuffle in Kashmir again.
Yeah.
Jay, I know you've been tracking it. What do you got on that?
Yeah. So on Tuesday, 22 April, I'm gonna probably say it wrong, Pahagam tourist destination. It's in the Kashmir territories. A group attacked a group of tourists. As far as I know, 26 killed, 25 Indian, 1 Nepali. That may have changed. Were killed, and apparently the men in the group were singled out and were accused of supporting Indian Prime Minister Modi. And then there was mention of, this is according to witnesses, mention of the fact that India revoked the Jammu Kashmir autonomy in 2019. And so once those men were singled out, they were executed, basically. Of course, India has accused Pakistan of either setting this up or supporting the attack. Pakistan denies it. A group that calls themselves the Kashmir Resistance or the Resistance Front has taken responsibility on social media. Apparently, they're relatively new. 2019 was when they first kind of reared their head a little bit. Very little is known about them. But India has linked them to, and again, I'm probably going to say this wrong, Lashkar-e-Taiba, who
Yes,
carried
that's
out
right.
I believe it was 2008 Mumbai attacks.
That's right.
And
the Taj Mahal Hotel.
Yep, absolutely. Which I've been studying that since I was, since it happened. It's pretty fascinating for me how it turned out or how it was conducted. With they had someone in their ear the entire time, a handler walking them through the attack. So, but I digress. So in the aftermath of it, both India and Pakistan have taken measures. India first held a press conference and declared their own people in Pakistan at the embassies persona non grata and said, get out. You get out of Pakistan. Pakistan did the same in India, and both have revoked the visas of Pakistani and Indian nationals within their borders. They gave them 48 hours to get out. And then Pakistan also banned India Air, the airline, from its airspace. Told them, if we see you in our airspace, we're shooting you down. And then India retaliated by suspending the Indus Water Treaty for the river, control of the river. And Pakistan has replied that that is an act of war. And then as of this morning, both sides are reporting sporadic gunfire between the two outposts in the region. So, and like you said, D, these are nuclear powers. So, yeah, I mean, they've had issues before. This has been ongoing since the 40s. I think it was 1947 when the British gave up control and all of this started. So,
yes, 47.
47. So, I mean, it's a tense situation. I actually have a neighbor who lives behind me here. He's from India, and I spoke to him about it yesterday. And he's firmly on the Indian side, and he, says this is a religious thing. He blames, Muslims and all this, and so it was a good talk to get it from someone who just came back from that area. But it's also a very one-sided talk, so it's worth watching. I think it's worth us watching.
So when they split, Kashmir was run by a Hindu king, predominantly Muslim, which is a recipe for a continuous conflict till to date. One thing interesting, or I don't know if interesting is the right word, when you look at limited nuclear war, there's no such thing, right? So we did a study on this, or somebody, when I was at the Pentagon, where they showed what would happen if there was a limited engagement between Pakistan and India. It would drop the temperature around the world like 4 degrees Celsius down. That would equate to a massive loss of crops, and like 1 billion people would starve to death just with the limited exchange between those two countries. So it's hardly even in the news right now. I'm not saying they're going nuclear, right? So, but people are like, why does it matter to me? Like if there is an actual strategic level nuclear exchange, it affects the whole globe. Like we're not gonna be able to say, well, it's horrible to be there. It's going to be horrible to be anywhere on the planet. So this is something, and that also goes to like the next topic, not to skip it, why it's so important that Iran doesn't get a nuke, right? Because the more people that have a nuclear weapon, the more likely it's going to be used by somebody. And it is not confined to the countries that are participating, is my point.
And I remember that article I sent you. Sorry, Andy. I sent that from the archives. I forget the name of the website, but there was a study done back, excuse me, in the 70s by CIA that said that the probability of a conflict, a full-scale conflict between India and Pakistan was low, very, very low. But if there was going to be one, it would be a nuclear exchange.
Yes, that's why people use that as an example. Yes, good point, Jack.
Which came near happening in 1998. Probably the closest, the nearest that the world has been to actual nuclear confrontation occurred in 1998 between India and Pakistan. And the lead up to that is quite complicated, but it had to do with both sides doing nuclear tests, and both sides feeling that from their own intelligence, reportedly believing that the other side was going to launch unprovoked strike. Interesting part about that, and I don't know if this was bluff or not, but when I went through the Marine Corps War College, we had a Pakistani general in our class. This was way back in 2009. So it was only about 10 years after this whole event, and he had been, a field grade officer during that. And he talked to us about it and said, yeah, absolutely. We were, and he was quite open about it. Again, I don't know if this was bluff, but he said, yeah, our policy is a preemptive strike if we believe that India is going to do it. We're not going to wait to be hit. And so that's how close it came. And it's part of their strategic calculus. And so I'm sure it's the same on the Indian side. And to to your point about the history of this, because it's had the 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 problems between India and Pakistan are very ill understood in the United States, and they have in the past not been understood by our policymakers at all. And so, for instance, when we have been trying to get Pakistan on board, all right, initially in supporting the Mujahideen against the Soviets, and then again in opposing and rooting out those same Mujahideen when they became Al Qaeda and were buried in the Taliban, all right, and the ISI was supporting the Taliban. And what we never understood during all this time was that for India, all of these other things were sideshows, absolute. And so every calculus that I'm sorry, that Pakistan made was made on the basis of its policy towards India, its enmity towards India, to include getting Taliban on side, which in turn meant having considerable influence in Afghanistan as a bulwark against India, because they felt if they didn't do that, India would gain influence in Afghanistan, and Pakistan would be sandwiched, between the two. So we never really understood this, and we never approached Pakistan when it came to negotiation or trying to get them on board with anything that Pakistan would find really inherently attractive strategically, as for perhaps not siding with Pakistan against India, but enabling negotiations that would meet some of Pakistan's concerns, which have to do, with a number of things, to include water rights and things like that, which we have never addressed. And yes, the enmity goes all the way back to the British partition of India, which was one of the most ill-conceived decisions made as the empire shut down. It was a guy named Mountbatten who was the viceroy of India at the time, and accusations against him were that he wanted to rush on to his next posting. He was a senior military commander, and he just wanted to give India its independence and carve out this thing called Pakistan that would acknowledge the religious differences within India at the time. So the idea was that all the Muslims would live up in the northeast, northwest and northeast at the time. Sorry, very short history lesson. At the time, there was West Pakistan and there was East Pakistan, which subsequently in 1971 became Bangladesh. All right, so you can just think about it, okay? And you've got this subcontinent of, even back then, hundreds of millions of people, different sects, but Muslim and Hindu. And the British had kind of kept the lid on all this simmering tension over 200 years. And now they're going to lift the lid. And geographically, the Muslims weren't all up in Pakistan, East or West Pakistan. They were spread throughout the subcontinent. And so the British said, lo and behold, at midnight, right, very famously, there's a book about this called Freedom at Midnight, midnight of August, whatever it is, 1947, I forget what date it was. India, you've got your independence, and Pakistan, you come into being, all the Muslims will live up here, all the Hindus down here. And of course, you had absolute pandemonium, chaos, and horrendous slaughter. And you can look up the figures. No one really knows how many Muslims and Hindus died in the subsequent massacres, but I believe the number's in the millions. And the history of Pakistan and India has been fraught ever since. Bangladesh evolved in 1971 after a very bitter war, and India was involved in that war against Pakistan. So things have flared up at time to time. Kashmir has always been a really has been a hot button topic. By the way, beautiful area. I've been up there a couple of times before it became verboten to foreign tourists. Just absolutely stunning in the foothills of the Himalayas. But it's a religiously divided area, and both sides claim it. And when things start heating up, invariably things happen in Srinagar. Last thing I'll say, there's a very good movie about the 2008 attacks in Mumbai. Undoubtedly, LET came out of Pakistan, was trained within Pakistan, supposedly by the ISI. and commanded and controlled from Pakistan throughout the attacks, which resulted in several hundred civilian deaths, and included terrorists storming through the famous Taj Mahal Hotel in Mumbai, just killing people. But it was an amphibious assault, amphibious raid. It was actually very well planned. It unraveled towards the end, but very well planned, and uh, incidents like that. The Indians have a legitimate claim that the Pakistanis have been training terrorists with a view to attacking India, and India's hands are not clean either. The things have happened, assassinations within Pakistan that have been certainly, it appears, backed by or supported and launched from India.
Yeah, so we'll keep eyes on that. Anything else about? No? All right. Last bit of news. Third round of Iranian and U.S. negotiations just wrapped up in Oman. This was like the experts were talking about like the actual details. While this was happening earlier today, a huge explosion happened in the an Iranian port as well. Um, State TV, Iranian state TV, saying that both sides are going to go back to their countries and consult and come back again for hopefully another round of talks. Where Mick, let's start with you. What are your thoughts?
So I think the explosion you're talking about, D, was in Bandar Abbas or close to it, and I think it's probably, although we don't know, it's probably simple negligence on the part of the port facility. But of course, there are people out there who think it might be some kind of covert operations by the Israelis to disrupt the negotiations. I don't have any information on that, but to that point. But on the bigger issue, I was reading this morning. I'm part of a group called the Vandenberg Coalition, which is a nonpartisan group that believes foreign policy should stop at the water's edge. Senator Vandenberg said that famous line, so its motto is the water's edge. But they joined a bunch of other, I think, conservative groups to talk about what they call the seven deadly sins of what they're concerned about, and it's definitely written for President Trump, because it's if you read it, you'll see. But I thought it would be a good model for a discussion. Uh, uh, so I told Carrie I'd bring Carrie Filippetti's the executive director there, and I told her I'd bring it up. So the first one is, and this is we're going to start seeing this play out. So Iran cannot enrich its own uranium, right? Under the JCPOA from 2015, they could have up to 3.6% enriched uranium. The issue going back and forth between Special Envoy Witkoff and Secretary Rubio is it appeared that Witkoff was saying that they could essentially enrich their own uranium. They just couldn't have a certain, what I think most of the Iranian, the concern from the people are that they shouldn't be able to enrich it at all. So they can get it from someplace else, and then like Russia, and then use it for their own energy. So they don't have the ability then to turn it like they did and get all the way up to 60, which is super close to getting the 90 that you need for weaponizations. There are seven deadly sins too, and then I think I can throw it over to you guys to talk about some of these things, or just interrupt me as I go through it. The missiles, right? So the ballistic missiles weren't included before. That's a big problem, because the concern is once you have a nuclear warhead, how do you deliver it? I guess you can deliver it other ways, but the most concerning and quickest is a ballistic missile that can reach. So they would want to make sure that the agreement limits their ability to produce or even test missiles that could be capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. Monitoring, that's their third. It's one. Trust but verify is what President Reagan said. We're not going to take their word for it. There has to be very strong means to be able to ensure that they can't bypass the observation of the fact that they're sticking to the agreement. Let's see, I'll jump to 5. Okay, the other issue that was a big deal in 2018 when I was at the Pentagon and we were having this discussion at the White House is the 2015 agreement didn't address, funding terrorist organizations, their proxy operations. Uh, Iran's made it clear that they're not gonna include that in this. So I don't. This isn't what they're talking about, but there might be needs to be a covert annex to this or something that limits, or a sub rosa agreement that limits their ability to fund Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and others, because that is the biggest concern when it comes to reducing sanctions. If you do sanctions, and there's billions and more dollars that they can use to fund terrorist groups that are conduct things like October 7th. So that's another thing we're going to be hearing a lot about. And then the last one, and zip it. Um, there is specific sanctions on the central bank of Iran related to that can't be part of the sanction related to the terrorism support. That can't be part of the negotiated according to this group of uh, think tanks. So I think we're going to be seeing that play out as we have the next discussion. I think it's back in Oman. Um, or this is today. It might be today, actually, in Oman. And
Yeah, they
hopefully
just
we can
wrapped it
get,
up. They just
they
finished
just
it.
wrapped it up. There
Yeah.
you go. So we'll see what comes out of it. But those are the big issues, I think, when it comes to whether this goes forward with full support. Obviously, Israel's very concerned about this, and they're going to be putting a lot of pressure on the administration. And now we're seeing some of the, I think, right aligned think tanks starting to be concerned that we could basically just end up, from their point of view, of essentially the 2015 agreement. So we should all hope that they can get to an agreement. I think the administration so far has done a good job getting there and putting pressure on Iran, particularly with the military buildup. And we should all hope that it works out.
Boys, who wants to take that first?
I'll let you go.
Andy?
No, I mean, we've talked about the topic before, but I think Mick summed it all up, and I think for me, just to pile in and just going to be repeating Mick, which I've made a career out of, and I'm not ashamed to do that. But no, right, yeah, right on target.
So we'll
I
see the readout today, but hopefully
Yeah.
it's going to advance.
I think the readout from today so far right away, like reaction is like positive.
Oh, good.
So, but it was the experts talking, I guess, about like exactly what to do. What if they say, we still want to enrich uranium, but we'll give you guys robust monitoring.
I mean, there's part of negotiations or compromises, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm not in the administration, so I'm not giving away anything, but I would have what we're saying we want, and obviously what we would, and everybody does this, what we'd accept. And if there was some kind of negotiated agreement, well, okay, you're rich in uranium, but we have the ability to turn them off or something, or the IAEA or something has to have the ability to do that. And there's a big deal for Iran. I mean, if they get a lot of their sanctions removed, it'll be a huge benefit to them. So there's reasons to do this, and I don't think that the president's bluffing. I think that there could be a direct military strike on the facilities, the main ones, Natanz. There's several. Fordow. Um, it could happen, and it certainly would show just how weak Iran is. So they don't want it to happen. So there's reasons on both sides to get this done, and I think we should all be pulling for it. But there's going to be concerns that too much is given away on the side of the United States. Uh, but hopefully they can land in the right place.
I mean, what's the end goal? End goal is no nuclear weapons, right? Like,
Yes.
so get to that point and like,
It's no nuclear weapons, but
and
it's also
proxies.
doing more to limit the proxy support. I mean, we
So,
like to eliminate it, but we got to be realistic.
in a discussion like this, maybe not at the table with everybody there, but I guess covertly and behind the scenes, are they asking about like, hey, you're gonna put a leash on Israel?
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure they're going to say that, but stop attacking Israel. That's what I would tell them.
Yeah.
If you don't want Israel to attack Iran, don't support groups that attack Israel. I mean, 90% of the military support for Hamas came from Iran.
Right.
So.
So I mean that's I doubt Iran's even going to ask that. And I'll tell you why, because I think a big disappointment of this negotiating. So the tactic is the fact that we're not bringing proxies into play. We're not. I mean, and that was a weakness in the original JCPOA, was that Iran's malign influence was not challenged by anything in the JCPOA. Now, Iran's malign influence has been considerably reduced, certainly as far as Hamas is concerned, but it's still supporting Hezbollah. Hezbollah may be on its knees for now, but with Iranian support, will recover. It might take as long as a decade, but it will recover, and the Iranians will go on supplying weapons. So it'd be a good time to kind of broker an agreement that undermined that. But of most immediate concern, of course, to everyone at the Houthis. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's neither here nor there, because the US isn't going to agree to anything when it comes to Israel, but I don't think Iran would even broach that, because that opens up that whole bag of worms about what Iran has been doing to support proxies throughout the world.
Yeah.
And the fall of Assad has, of course, weakened Iran's position regionally too. All it has is really right now, I mean, it's the ability to rebuild Hezbollah and to continue to supply the Houthis.
Mick, you mentioned like if there was an agreement, there'd be some kind of covert kind of addendum or annex to it. Has that happened before, and how do you monitor that?
Well, if it's covert, then I wouldn't be talking about it. I mean, the reason why I suggested that, I don't even know if it's in play, but there's a lot of things that Iran simply couldn't acknowledge publicly that they would do. And one of them, as they say, and I'm on several shows where I see the Iranian perspective, to them, it's their allies, right? Hezbollah is their allies. They're not going to publicly say we're going to abandon our ally. But if we could get them to substantially reduce, again, we'd rather eliminate any support to them that happens over time without them having to publicly acknowledge it. I think that's what I'm calling like a covert.
Is there precedent for that?
I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I think there probably is, to have like a portion of an agreement, but I don't know. I mean, that's the point of being covert. We should never acknowledge it, because if that was the case, then other countries and groups would not ever agree to it again. We have to keep that essentially on the lowdown. And the idea behind it would be that eventually they would cease support to Hezbollah, but they just can't say it, because if they say it out loud, that's a huge slap for the Ayatollah, the supreme leader. So it's more important to me that we get it actually done than take some kind of public credit for getting them to cut it. So I don't know if that's the case. I'm just throwing it out there. Ultimately, it's in everybody's interest to ensure they don't get a nuclear weapon. And although I would support the military option if it's the only option, we don't want it. We don't want to go down that road, because then they're sea mining, the Straits of Hormuz. They're attacking embassies. They're attacking our partners and allies and bases. I mean, it's nobody should want this to turn into an actual conflict.
And there's no guarantee if we do hit it that it stops it really, like it doesn't bring it back to the Stone Age. It could delay it 6 months or blink twice if there is precedent for this.
I'm just advocating for it as a citizen, not as a.
Yeah, so we'll see what goes on from here. Mick, you wanted to mention something at the end of the show before we took
did.
off.
And I can see it on the TV right now. I know it's off topic, and I'm not a particularly religious person, but wanted to acknowledge it's the Pope's funeral today. It's something I think that's super interesting about him, and it kind of explains a lot about Pope Francis, is that he was a Jesuit. So he's the first Pope that was a Jesuit. And if you're not familiar with that order, it was founded by somebody who was a soldier. That's why they call them soldiers of God. St. Ignatius of Loyola. He was a soldier in Spain. But the fascinating thing about them is they not only are the teachers, the free thinkers, scientists, but they are known for sticking up for the poor, for the marginalized people in society, for human rights advocacy around the world. They're truly, and there's only 2% of all priests Jesuits. I know this. Again, I'm not a religious person or particularly religious, but my father was a Jesuit priest. Obviously, he left the priesthood and became a scientist, or I wouldn't be talking to you fine people. But so I've always had a fascination with them because my father, I did talk about it that much. He was very much in that same line. And I think if you're looking for what drove Pope Francis to be such a reformer and also to be somebody that really vocally advocated for refugees, for human rights around the world, um, I think that was it. It all came from the order of the Jesuits, which in some cases takes up to 10 years to even be to get into. So it's a very exclusive group. But I think whether you're Catholic or Christian or religious or not, I wish we had more people like the Jesuits.
Certainly in Central America in the 80s, when when the United States was because of the Cold War, this isn't an ethical judgment, but we were supporting a lot of regimes, El Salvador, Chile to some extent, Argentina, who were basically extreme right wing and did not have the best records in human rights. It was the Jesuit communities in those countries showing a great deal of courage that stood up for the populations. And there was a famous murder, right? The 1989 murder of Jesuit priests in El Salvador is what really got the United States to reconsider its policy towards the El Salvadorian government and ultimately resulted in negotiations with the rebels and eventually peace. But it was kind of a moment where the, government-backed death squads killed, I think it was 6 Jesuit priests in El Salvador
Yes.
in 89. And that was kind of the clincher.
Mhm.
But because I'm, also a fair guy and I'm interested in history, now the Jesuits didn't always have a benign reputation going back to, for instance, to the Spanish Inquisition. Um,
That's
where,
true.
it's a paradox. I mean, of course, as we're
Talking
talking
about today, talking about
yeah.
Watch your mouth, Andy.
No, no, don't get me wrong. I'm a big Jesuit supporter. I mean, I'm not just saying that because of Mick's father. I am. I mean, Jesuit schools, long-standing three pillars, right? Education,
yeah.
uh, and human rights. Well, that's 2 pillars. Sorry. Speaking of
Close enough.
education.
Yeah, and they kind of take well, they're kind of the guys that go and do the most dangerous stuff, right? You already mentioned like
Yeah.
they
Oh, that
they
was
will,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the soldiers of
Expeditionary,
God, yeah, yeah.
expeditionary. I know evangelism.
E- e-
That's
yeah,
it's a
evangelism.
bad
Yes.
name, but they were kind of the spearhead of
Yeah.
Catholic evangelism. Why am I finding
Yeah.
it so?
Close.
Yeah.
They're so
Anyway,
like they're the Marines of
yeah,
Yeah,
evangelicism.
that's what I like to think.
but yeah,
Yeah.
And again, I'm not proselytizing here. I'm just, but it's a big day for I think Catholics and it's a celebration of life, right? He was he was up there. But anyway,
Yeah. By all
just
accounts,
wanted
he was a good guy, and
yeah,
you know,
very, very highly respected.
yeah.
And it's always nice, nice to see a funeral, but it is nice to see a non-political event drawing leaders and constitutional monarchs from around the world,
that's right.
simply to mourn a very good, very influential man and pillar, of course, the center of the Catholic Church. So
Well,
Amen.
hopefully they don't elect a mutant next. Hopefully it's like
We'll
somebody
find out.
was.
The
Yeah.
conclave is starting. I think soon, right? Probably
I
Monday
think.
or
Yeah. All right, boys. This is great, guys. Don't forget to check out all the links down in the description. Mick, Lobo, Fogbow. All his publications are down in the description. Andy Milburn, When the Tempest Gathers, great autobiography about his escapades. And I'm not just kidding. I'm not fucking around. It's a very good book. Link is in the description. Jason Had a Run. Jason Lyons. All his links are in the description. If you want to see these guys, talk to these guys, read what they've written, all the links are in the description. If you want early access to both the Team House and Eyes on Geopolitics, also ad free, you can go to patreon.com/the Team House, and guess what? That link is there too. Thanks, guys. This is awesome.
thanks, guys.
thank
Have a great day.
Hey guys, it's Jack. I just want to talk to you for a moment about how you can support the show if you've been watching it, enjoying it, but you'd like to get a little bit more involved and help us continue to do this. You can check out our Patreon. It is patreon.com/theteamhouse. And for $5 a month, you can get access to all of these episodes of The Team House ad-free. The same goes with our affiliated podcast, Eyes On, with Andy Milburn, Jason Lyons, Mick Mulroy. That one, you will also get all of those episodes ad-free. And you support the channel and the show, and we really appreciate it. The Patreon members are literally what has helped this company, this small business survive, especially during our early years. And you are what continues to help this thing going, even as we navigate the turbulent world of YouTube advertising. So we really appreciate all of you guys. There's going to be a link down in the description to that Patreon page, and there is also going to be a link to our new merch shop. So if you guys want to go and get some Team House merchandise, we got stickers, and we also have patches. And I should mention, if you sign up for Patreon at $10 a month, we will mail you this patch as well. So we really appreciate that. But they're also for sale on the merch shop. And additionally, they got t-shirts up there, water bottles, a tote bag, coffee mugs, all that good stuff. So please go and check them out and support the show. We really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.